guys, so this is a tutorial about how to make fast loops, and this will be partly about testing what the closest enemy is to your ship, but this is a bit of a bigger question about how to make versatile fast loops and things. So firstly, I've set up a frame here. We've got your ship in the middle. Most of this stuff doesn't do much, but you can use the left button to move these baddies around. And then we're going to make a loop that tests where the closest one is. So like right now it should be this guy, and I've made little crosshairs to point to where the closest one is. So most of these are not that interesting. I've got some variables ready to deal with the fast loop. I'll just show the programming for this as well, just for the dragging business. There we go, and it quits when I press escape as well. So if I go in here and can drag things around, press escape, boop, there we go. So the plan is I'm going to make a versatile loop that will just let us test for the nearest enemy to a certain point. Let's make it that. So there we go, and I'll make a category in here. For these categories, I should warn as well, like it's a bit awkward looking inside them sometimes. You might have, like, I think categories inside other categories can be a bit dicey to look inside, so just good to know. Alright, so there we go. So we'll call that closest enemy to a point. I'll put a comment in just kind of explaining what the loop is going to do. Save that, and I might have a separate video later about comments, but my advice is always put comments as if you were talking to your future self, basically. If it's a one-man project, you just imagine like it's months ahead and you don't know what this is. So, I'm going to make it so when it tests for the closest enemy when you press space. Obviously you might have a different trigger for this. You could make a strategy game, like you could make like a space strategy game and have little ships fighting each other and have them test for the closest enemy and target that enemy or something. Like if they don't have a target, they look for the closest guy. So right, so when we press space, we start a loop. The loop is called, normally when I type the name of the loop, I copy it there as well. We run it, okay, no. And we run it a number of times that corresponds to the number of enemies. So what you'll have now is it runs a routine called closest enemy to point, and it runs it number of enemies times rather than once. Actually, no, sorry. Okay, forget that. Let's run. There we go. We run that once at that point, and we'll run it multiple times in the secondary loop. I'll show this in a sec. So what I have now is a variables object designed to handle a lot of these loops. And I call it unique ID. So the first thing is I've got these blade enemies have a unique ID variable. And if you're going to run a loop for multiple different objects, it's good to have that unique ID on the same variable number. It's just on variable B, basically. So, because normally Clickteam can be a bit weird about distinguishing between different objects. So if what we're going to do is we're going to number these enemies 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then have the loop go through each of them and examine each of them and compare things. So first, you kind of set up the preamble to this. So we say set unique ID being examined to 0, and what else have we got in here? Yeah, and we'll say that the best distance found so far is -1, because your distance is never negative, so we can make -1 to indicate that we don't have a distance found yet. And we can also spread value 1 through the unique ID of these, so that this sets up what we need. Oh yeah, that's right, and I also find that somehow if you go into a sub loop when you're spreading a value, it doesn't seem to work very well. So I like to do another line of this here and start the sub loop there. So this is setting up our preamble. We got ready to like go through the unique IDs 1, 2, 3, and 4. And when you're starting a loop like this, it's important to make it kind of airtight in and out, basically. You want to set up all the defaults for everything and not assume too much about what you've got going in. So you want your loop to work no matter what's happening when you go into it, and just always input and output, basically. You have your input set up, and then it comes up with the right answers. It's like setting up a machine that gives you the right answer to a question, which is kind of what computers do. So let's say, make that a B loop, and here it's just a name. It doesn't have to say B or anything. Here we run it for the number of objects. So if we set everything up once, then we loop through the number of objects. So we then say, make this B loop. Right, so first I want to add 1 to the unique ID being examined. So now this loop will just go through, add 1 each time. So it'll look at 1, 2, 3, 4 based on the number of enemies. And then we say that if this object's unique ID is equal to the unique ID being examined, that will mean it's relevant. So you've got to, when you're doing a loop like this, you've got to make sure the conditions, a condition like that will kind of pick out, like if I say to destroy this object now, it'll destroy the object whose unique ID is equal to the unique ID being examined. So this loop is all about picking out the right enemies and doing things with them. So, also actually, I'll expand this to be a little bit more versatile as well, because I want to show that. So let's say that when I activate this, I set up the X and Y of the ship here as well. So now we could get the nearest enemy to any point, basically, but we're just defining our X and Y. We're defining our X and Y as being the ship. There's X of ship to that, set Y of ship to that. So now in principle, and you're going to change the order of these as well. Make sure they're in the right order, because if you don't, your loop won't work the first time, but it will work the second time it's run. So this is kind of input and output again. You define what X and Y coordinates you want to compare things to, and you find the closest enemy to that point. And you can make these even more versatile, right? But that's not for this video. Right, so then we go through and we get a distance. Let's say distance found is, there should be a distance thing in here. Yeah, distance between 2 points. And because we want this versatile, I'm not going to use the actual X and Y of the ship. I'm going to use the X and Y we kind of fed into the loop here. Sometimes I name my variables a little bit after the loop they're going to take a part in. You could have variables just for a specific loop. Some of them I have kind of generic. It's up to you really how you want to organize it. Right, so between that and the X of the enemy and the Y of the enemy. So now it's going through each one and it's finding the distance found for that. And now what you want is the first time it runs the loop, your best distance found is going to be just -1. So you want to kind of, you want to say that whichever enemy you find, if there's nothing else, that's automatically the closest enemy, right? So we say that the ID of the best enemy is, equal to the ID being examined. And then we say that the best distance found is the distance that was found. And so right now it'll find the first enemy and just say that that was the best. But if we, let's put that there, say if it's different from -1, it'll do the same thing, but we only want that to happen if the distance we found is less than the best distance found so far. So closer enemies take priority. There we go. So that the first time it runs the loop, this line here, 16, isn't going to trigger because the distance found is never going to be different from -1. It's set up with -1 up here. But the second time it goes through, it could easily find that the second enemy is closer than the first one. And there you go. So either way... Oh, and also we'll position the crosshairs on the... Actually, no, I'll make this a bit more sophisticated even. I could have done that, but let's say when we're done... When done... Okay, so now we have a loop that goes through. It says the UID of the best enemy. So we still have that recorded. And let's say the unique ID is equal to the unique ID of the best enemy, closest enemy basically in this context. Then we position the crosshairs over the closest enemy. And so you could position the crosshairs every time it gets a new ranking winner, but that feels a bit wasteful somehow. You might as well position it at the end. So what I'm hoping now is that this will work, and we'll have... We've got 4 enemies. I press space. It'll get the closest one. It seems to be working. First time. Groovy. So I position this one close to the ship. There it is. Move this one. Move it further away. And yeah, so that does seem to be working. It's finding the closest enemy. So if they're all kind of far away... And computers are good at this kind of thing, finding the closest enemy. And there you go. I'll show all this at once, I think. Yeah, let's just get that all on screen at once. It is possible to show it all at once. And there you go. That is how it's done. And you can set yourself up a versatile fast loop like this. So so long as you can define your input, I might even add a comment saying what the input is. You set up your input, you run the routine like this, it goes through, checks each one, comes out with the right answer, and then there you go. And you could have a little strategy game here where these ships rotate. I can make a tutorial later for rotating as well. They find an enemy, they rotate towards them, they shoot at them. You could have a little sort of battle screensaver or something at least. Just little guys finding the nearest enemy. There you go.